I said you're not welcome here. That's the first thing my son shouted as I stepped onto his perfectly polished porch, his voice so loud, the neighbor's curtains actually twitched. His wife stood behind him, arms folded, her mouth tight like she was chewing on a lemon, not saying a word, but she didn't have to. Her silence screamed everything. Disgust. Annoyance. Impatience. Like I was a stray animal scratching at the door. I looked down at my hands. Wrinkled. Tired. Still holding the warm tray of homemade biryani I'd spent hours preparing, his favorite. The scent was still rising, still comforting, still filled with the kind of love only a mother can simmer into rice. Before we start, please make sure to like this video and hit this subscribe button so you never miss a story like this. And also comments where you are watching from. Thanks. Daniel, I whispered, I came to see my grandson. Just 5 minutes. Please. He didn't budge. No. You don't just show up here uninvited. We've talked about boundaries, remember? This is our space now. Our space? I said, my voice cracking. I raised you in one bedroom, working doubles just to put milk in your mouth, and now suddenly I'm too much. An inconvenience? He scoffed, laughing bitterly. That was 30 years ago. Things change. People grow. Some of us moved on. Maybe you should too. That one stung. I should have dropped the tray right then and walked away. But I didn't. I stood there, like a fool, trying to find the boy I once held through fever nights and the man who now looked at me like I was dirt under his expensive shoes. Daniel, you used to cry when I left for work. You used to wait at the window. You used to. I was a child, he shouted, stepping forward now. I didn't understand then. But I do now. You were never really there. You were always too busy playing the martyr. Always reminding me what you gave up. Like I should be grateful for being born into your struggle. I stood frozen. It was like he'd rewritten our entire history, torn out the pages where I went hungry so he could eat, where I walked miles to save bus fare, where I sewed his school uniforms at night by candlelight because the power bill was overdue. He added, calmer now, almost cold, and let's be honest. You're not here to see Liam. You're here to make a point. To guilt trip us. Like always. Something inside me snapped. I looked at his wife. Still quiet. Still smug. I knew where this was coming from. I turned back to him. You've changed, Daniel. She's changed you. I don't even recognize you anymore. He leaned in, eyes hard. No, Ma. I finally found peace. And your chaos doesn't fit here. So please, go. Before I call someone. Call someone. My own son threatening to call someone on me. I nodded slowly, chest burning, stomach flipping like I might be sick. I placed the tray gently on the porch rail and stepped back. That's for Liam, I said. Even if his parents won't let him know his grandmother. And then I walked away. But as I stepped off that porch, tears burning behind my eyes, heart slamming like a fist inside my chest, I looked to the right and saw a small face peeking between curtains next door. Little Ava. The neighbor's daughter. 6 years old, wild curls and kind eyes. She waved shyly. Her mom, Maria, came out moments later, holding her baby brother on her hip. She saw the tray, then saw my face. And without a word, she opened her gate. Come in, Miss Farah, she said softly. You look like you could use a glass of water. I did. But I got so much more. Inside their tiny home, I sat at their mismatched table, and we ate the biryani together, every bite that was supposed to feed the family I raised now feeding the one that welcomed me without question. Maria didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She'd seen the looks. Heard the shouting. And she simply said, You've always been kind to us. Ava loves you. I know you don't have much, but you still bring her sweets. She always says, Grandma Fair is the nicest person on the street. That broke me. Because my own son had turned me into a stranger. But this little girl, who owed me nothing, still saw my heart. That night, I stared at the old folder tucked under my bed, my will, my savings, everything I'd spent a lifetime building. I'd planned to leave it all to Daniel. For Liam's future. But what future? The boy wasn't even allowed to know me. He was being raised to believe his grandmother was some burden. An embarrassment. A shadow to erase. No. I wasn't going to be erased. That night, I made a decision. Not out of revenge. Not out of spite. But out of clarity. Sometimes, family is not blood. Sometimes, love finds its way where it's welcome. So I rewrote everything. Line by line. Clause by clause. I called my lawyer and made it official. My home. My jewelry. My emergency fund. Every last rupee. To Ava. The child who saw me. Who waved at me when the door slammed in my face. Who called me Grandma Farah when my own grandson didn't even know my name. Moral. Blood might make you related, but love is what makes you family. Never take the ones who loved you when they had nothing for granted, because when they walk away, no amount of regret can bring them back. You want to know the worst part? It wasn't always like this. There was a time Daniel used to cling to my sorry, refused to let go when I dropped him at school. He used to kiss my hand before bed and whisper, "Thank you for working hard, Alma." That was before the college degrees, before the big house, before the woman who told him my tears were manipulations, not memories. I remember the first time I ever held him. He was so small, his whole body fit across my forearm. My husband, may he rest in peace, had already started drinking by then. The night Daniel was born, he wasn't even there. Just me, a kind nurse, and the thunderstorm outside. I named him after strength, Daniel, like the lion's den. Because I knew the world wouldn't be gentle with us. And it wasn't. I raised him alone after his father died in an accident when Daniel was just 7. No insurance. No savings. Just a widow with calloused hands and a son with eyes too wide for his age. We slept on the floor. I worked 2 cleaning jobs. There were nights I didn't eat just to keep his lunchbox full. But I never once let him see my hunger. Every parent sacrifices. But some sacrifices come with silence. Others come with scars. I used to believe he saw it. I remember when he brought home his first paycheck from tutoring in high school, he gave half to me and said, "You've done enough, Alma. Let me help now." That was the boy I raised. But things started shifting when he went to university. That's where he met her. Claire. She wore cashmere cardigans and carried a certain tone in her voice, like every word was a final judgment. The first time we met, she shook my hand like she was trying to avoid touching my skin. No hug. No smile. Just a polite nod that said, "I'm tolerating you, because I have to." Still, I kept quiet. I told myself, she'll warm up. She just needs time. But Claire didn't need time. She needed distance. And she built it, brick by brick. It started small. Daniel would visit less. Then, he started screening my calls. And when I finally visited their first apartment, I noticed the little things. My framed picture, replaced by a glass vase. The crochet blanket I made, stuffed into a closet. I didn't say a word. Because I thought, if I stay kind, they'll come around. But kindness doesn't fix entitlement. One Sunday, I remember, I showed up early with homemade parathas. Daniel opened the door halfway, shocked. "Ma, we weren't expecting you." "I know," I smiled, holding up the container. "I just thought, maybe breakfast?" He hesitated. Looked over his shoulder. And then she appeared. Claire. Arms crossed, bathrobe tied tightly, eyebrows lifted like she'd just spotted a fly. Oh, she said flatly. Didn't realize we were running a restaurant now. I tried to laugh. Only for my son. She didn't smile. Daniel didn't laugh. And I stood there, like a guest at my own family's table, slowly realizing I wasn't welcome anymore. It didn't happen all at once. That's what people don't understand. Estrangement creeps in like fog. One missed birthday. One unanswered call. One too many word message left on read. By the time Liam was born, I didn't even know they were pregnant until a neighbor mentioned seeing them at the hospital. My grandson came into this world, and I didn't even know. That's when it really hit me. The distance was permanent. Planned. Enforced. I tried once more, when Liam turned 2. I bought a stuffed elephant, wrapped it carefully, even added a card that said, "From Grandma Farah, with love." It was returned. Unopened. A sticky note taped on the front, "We've discussed boundaries. Please respect them." Respect them? I gave everything so they could draw lines now. I remember sitting in my room that night, lights off, gift on my lap, and just silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy, echoing kind that makes you question if you were ever enough. It wasn't long after that I started getting visits from Ava. The neighbor girl. She'd skip over after school, ponytail bouncing, always asking questions. "Did you really grow up in a village? Can you show me how to make chai like you do? Why do your bangles make that pretty sound?" Her mother, Maria, was younger than my son. Worked night shifts at the hospital. No husband. No parents nearby. Just her and 2 kids. I'd watch her come home at dawn, exhausted but smiling. And little by little, without even realizing it, I started leaving my door open in the afternoons. So Ava could walk in. So Maria could rest while I kept the kids busy. So I could feel, just for a moment, what it was like to be wanted again. You know, people think inheritance is just about money. But really, it's about meaning. Who gets the last piece of you when you're gone? Who do you trust to carry your name? Your memory? Your values? At first, I thought it had to be Daniel. But now? Now I see clearly. I see it in the way Ava hugs me without being told. In the way Maria checks on me without agenda. In the way their door is always open, not because I'm wealthy, but because I'm loved. Love doesn't reject you at the porch. Love doesn't return gifts with sticky notes. Love doesn't need to be reminded what you did to deserve a seat at the table. It happened on a Tuesday. The kind of plain, unremarkable day no one remembers. I was cleaning out the bottom drawer of my bedroom dresser, searching for a photograph I thought I'd lost. Instead, I found the envelope. Yellowed edges. My handwriting on the front, "Daniel, in case of my passing." Inside, the will I had written years ago. Every word soaked in the hope that one day, when I was gone, he would read it and feel my love, wrapped around every penny, every rupee, every asset I had saved for him. But staring at it now, all I felt was pain. Not anger. Not revenge. Just a hollow ache. The kind that comes from being invisible in the life you built. He didn't need this money. He had a tech job. A fancy SUV. A house with 2 stories and a digital doorbell. He had everything I thought money could buy. But what he didn't have was time for me. Love for me. A seat at his son's birthday table for me. I ran my fingers across his name. Daniel Farhan Mehta. And then, slowly, carefully, I tore it in half. No tears in my eyes. No tremble in my hands. Only calm. Because the truth was simple, inheritance isn't about who deserves your money. It's about who deserves your legacy. I had one more thing to do. I walked down the hall to the shelf by the living room window. From the tin box behind my late husband's photograph, I took out the notarized property deed and bank documents I'd kept hidden for years. Everything I had left, my house, my savings, the small parcel of land my father left me in Tamil Nadu. Quietly growing in value while the world changed around me. I sat at the kitchen table, picked up the phone, and called my lawyer. "Yes, I'd like to make some changes to my will." He asked, "Same beneficiary as before?" And I said, without hesitation, "No. Her name is Ava Santiago." You'd think I'd have second thoughts. That maybe I'd wake up the next day and regret it. But I didn't. The very next week, Ava came bouncing in like she always did, her backpack thudding to the floor, 2 front teeth missing and a juice box in her hand. "Guess what?" she squealed. "I got picked to sing at the spring concert. And guess who taught me to breathe from my belly like you said?" I smiled, brushing her hair from her face. "You did, Ava." "You remembered." Of course she did. She always remembered. She remembered my birthday when my son didn't. She remembered how I like my tea with 2 spoons of sugar, not 1. She remembered to bring back my books from the library and draw me pictures when I looked sad. A child with no blood ties, but more heart than any I had raised. That weekend, Maria brought over a box of old saris I hadn't worn in years and helped me iron them, just for fun. "Sometimes I think you're more of a mother to Ava than I've been," she said softly. I shook my head. "You are her world, Maria. I just get to be a small light along the way." But she grabbed my hand. Looked me in the eye. "No. You're not a small light. You've been her sun when mine was setting." And just like that, I knew my decision wasn't about money. It was about light. Weeks passed. Peace returned. Until one afternoon, another plain, unremarkable day, I heard the knock. Not the soft knock Ava used. This was sharp. Demanding. I opened the door and saw him. Daniel. Not the boy I raised, but the man who stopped being my son the day he told me to stay away. He didn't say hello. Just shoved a paper in my hand. "What is this?" "Claire says someone at the office saw a legal notice about your estate. You're giving your inheritance to the neighbors?" I stayed quiet. Because nothing I could say would be enough anymore. His voice rose. "You're giving my legacy to a little girl who doesn't even know how to spell your last name?" I looked at him. At the suit that fit too well. At the watch on his wrist worth more than my entire year's pension. At the face that once held my cheek when he was afraid of thunder. And I said, softly but clearly, "It stopped being your legacy the day I stopped being your mother." He stared at me. Like I'd slapped him. But I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't moved an inch. Just stood there. Calm. Steady. "You banned me from your life, Daniel. You made me a stranger to my own blood. And now you're surprised that strangers became my family?" He tried to speak. But No, I said. "You made your choice. I'm just making mine." He left without another word. And I stood at the doorway, watching the distance I had carried for years finally walk away. I didn't cry. Because some goodbyes don't need tears. Some just need truth. And that night, Ava crawled into my lap with a book in her hand and said, "I hope when I grow up, I can take care of you forever." I smiled, my chest tightening. "You already are, little one," I whispered. "More than you'll ever know." The envelope came a week later. Thick. Official. Stamped from an attorney's office I recognized, Daniel's firm. I didn't open it right away. Something about the weight of it told me I didn't need to. I already knew what was inside. Legal threats. A demand to reverse the will. A claim that I was mentally unfit or under undue influence. I sat at the table in silence. The same table where I'd fed him biryani from my hands when he was too tired to lift a spoon. The same table where he'd once laid his head in my lap after his first heartbreak. Now that same boy, my son, was trying to prove I was unworthy of deciding where my life's work went. It should have broken me. But instead, it lit something. A fire I hadn't felt in years. I picked up the phone. Not to call Daniel. Not to plead. I didn't beg before, and I wasn't going to start now. I called Maria. And within hours, she was by my side, holding my hand like a daughter. "He's actually suing you," she gasped. I nodded. "Then let's fight back." We didn't hire an expensive lawyer. We didn't have to. The truth doesn't need decoration, it just needs courage. At the hearing, Daniel came in like a prince walking into his courtroom. Flanked by two lawyers in polished suits. I sat quietly, wearing the same green shawl my husband bought me on our 25th anniversary. Ava sat behind me. Holding a notebook she'd decorated with stars and the words, "I love you, Auntie Mina." She didn't understand everything. But she knew it was important. That day, everything came out. How Daniel hadn't invited me to birthdays, holidays, or his home in years. How I'd spent Diwalis lighting candles alone while their Instagram posts flashed fireworks and luxury gifts. How his last phone call to me wasn't a greeting, but a warning. The judge raised an eyebrow. "And now you're contesting her mental fitness?" Daniel's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we believe Mrs. Mina has been manipulated by the neighboring family into changing her will." "She changed her will," I said, interrupting. "After years of being made to feel like she didn't matter. After being shut out like trash from the very child she gave birth to." I turned to face him. For years, I stayed quiet. I told myself maybe he's busy. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I'm too emotional. But no. I wasn't wrong. I was just inconvenient. And now? Now that I've finally chosen to love someone who shows love back, you call it manipulation? Daniel looked away. For the first time, ashamed. And I wasn't done. "Do you know who took me to the hospital when I fainted last summer? Ava's mother. Do you know who brings me groceries every week without me asking? Her father. Do you know who reads me poetry every Saturday morning just because she thinks I smile better when I hear it? That little girl. That girl you call a stranger." I looked at the judge. "My legacy isn't cash. It's care. And she's earned every bit of it." Silence. The judge leaned forward. "Do you feel you're in sound mental health, Mrs. Mina?" "I feel clearer than I've ever been." A nod. A bang of the gavel. Case dismissed. I didn't celebrate. I didn't clap or cheer. I just turned to Ava and gave her a hug. "You okay?" she asked, wide-eyed. I smiled. Better than okay. Because I had just fought for the right to love. And I had won. That evening, the phone rang again. Daniel. I didn't want to pick up. But something inside me, motherhood, I guess, still flickered with the hope that maybe this time, he'd say something different. So I answered. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Mom." And I could hear the tears. The real ones. Not courtroom regret. But a child realizing he might have lost something money couldn't buy. I didn't know it had gotten this far. I was angry. "And I thought you were trying to punish me." I didn't speak for a moment. Then finally, "Daniel, I wasn't punishing you. I was finally choosing myself." Silence. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Face to face?" I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just said, maybe. One day. But not yet. Because healing is not a switch. It's a seed. And right now, I was finally learning to water mine, with people who stayed, who saw me, who chose me. It was Ava's birthday. She turned 11. They invited me over, of course. Not as a guest, but as family. Her mom cooked too much food. Her dad strung up fairy lights in the backyard. Ava wore a crown made of fresh marigolds and glitter. And I wore a smile I hadn't felt in decades. Not the polite kind you wear for society. The real kind, the one that bubbles from the soul and warms every inch of your bones. After cake, they brought out one last gift. A small wooden box. Hand-carved. Ava pushed it toward me, eyes sparkling. Open it, Auntie. Inside was a letter. But not from her. From me. My handwriting. My words. My final message, sealed and saved for when the time was right. You see, weeks ago, after the hearing, after the apology, after the dust had settled, I sat down and wrote everything. Not for the court. Not for Daniel. But for her. And that letter, she chose to read out loud. Dear Ava. If you are reading this, it means time has passed. And you're old enough now to know what love really means. Not the fairy tale kind. The real kind. The kind that doesn't always come from where you expect. The kind that shows up when you're sick, when you're scared, when you have nothing left to offer. You gave me that love. When the world decided I was too old to matter, too emotional to listen to, you looked at me like I was the sun. You reminded me I still had stories to tell. Jokes to laugh at. Memories to make. So, I leave my home to you. I leave my savings to your education. I leave my diaries, every one of them, to your safekeeping. Because they are filled with lessons I hope you'll read one day and whisper, she lived. She tried. She loved. And if people ever ask you why a little girl got the inheritance meant for someone else, you can smile and say. Because love isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. Who stays. Who sees you, even when you feel invisible. With all the love this world can hold. Your second mother. Mina. When she finished, her mother was crying. Her father wiped his eyes. Even the wind paused, as if listening. And Ava stood up and walked across the yard, right to me. She didn't say anything. She just hugged me. Tight. Fierce. The way only a child can. Like she was holding the past, the present, and the promise of the future all at once. Daniel never did walk back through that door. He called sometimes. Checked in. Said Happy New Year and how's your health, in short, careful phrases. We were polite again. Maybe one day we'll be more. But I stopped waiting at the window. Because now, I had a family that didn't need guilt or obligation to keep me close. They came because they wanted to. And in the end, isn't that what every mother wants? Not riches. Not awards. Just to be chosen. To be seen. To be loved out loud. Read. Blood makes you related. But love? That's what makes you family. Don't wait for people to see your worth. Give your heart to those who already do.